Welcome back to the shop. This is part 2 of the KX250F Diagnosing Running Gremlins. If you haven't seen part 1, there'll be a link down in the description. We went ahead and got the all balls fuel pump kit for it, so we have that here. We're going to put that in a minute. But I'm going to explain why we chose to go with this kit real fast before we get started. As you know from what I mentioned in part 1, these bikes have had kind of an issue with rejecting fuel pumps from time to time. The CDI, PCM, ECM, whatever you want to call it, the computer, it can reject the fuel pump. Oftentimes what will happen is while you're riding the bike, everything's fine, the bike's fully warm, you go to shut it off and it doesn't want to start back up again until it cools off a little bit, and then it fires up and starts up again, and the same thing happens once it gets hot. I believe there was a recall. I get this information from a video, which will be a link in the description, on a KX250 SR that I did a fuel pump on back in like 2022, I think it was, where it had that issue, and we put an all balls kit in it and it completely fixed the issue. Well, down in the comment section of that, there was a ton of people. At the time, I wasn't aware of this issue, but there was a ton of people that had the same issue. They would bring their bike back to the dealership, they would chase it down to a faulty fuel pump, replace the fuel pump with the OEM pump, and it would be fine for about 6, 10, maybe 15 hours, and the problem would come back. I can tell you that I put this all balls kit in probably about 4 different bikes so far, KX bikes, and that problem has never come back with that pump motor, I should say. Now since then, based on the comments in that KX250 SR video, there has been a recall, and people were having their fuel pumps replaced by Kawasaki, but I'm still getting reports in the comment section of that video that people are having even their recalled new pump go bad, or they replace the pump on their own to the updated revised pump provided by Kawasaki. You know, they've revised the pump, and they're still having the issue. I've heard rumors about a reflash on them, but people are still having the issue from time to time. It's not every bike either, right? It's just some bikes. But based on the comments in that video and my experience, I decided to go with the all balls kit once again on this bike. I suggested it to the owner. I said we can go with the OEM, but there's always that risk, especially because he's claimed he's had about 2 or 3 different pumps on this, and the same issue keeps happening. So I said, well, let's just go with the all balls. I have experience with that pump. It works. Now, here's the real question. Is it going to fix this bike? Man, I'm hoping so, because, you know, I'm going based on my experience and what I'm seeing in the comment section, and what I'm seeing this bike do. So yeah, fingers crossed, guys. Let's get started. So let me go ahead and pull the tank off this, get it on the bench. We have to swap these pumps. Okay, I want to be able to flip this tank upside down without all the gas going everywhere. So I'm just going to plug that off and flip her upside down. We have to get this motor off. My old trusty Black & Decker. You've seen this thing in my videos since I first started making videos. Well, it's taking a dump. The light turns on, but it don't work anymore. Oh well. It's okay. It's not brushless anyway, so it makes sparks, so I don't need to be having fires happen and stuff. I have this impact right here my brother's turned me on to. He lent it to me to try it out. See if I can get familiar with it. I'm going to use this instead of air today. Trying to get familiar with it. As you hear me say most of my videos, it's real important to be familiar with your impact, mainly when you're fastening bolts down. Not so much when you're taking them out. That really doesn't matter. But when you're fastening them, it's real important to be familiar with it. Alright, so we get a Phillips and needle nose pliers. Get this thing swapped out real quick here. I put a positive there so we can remember that that goes positive, the red wire goes right there. Of course, I'll just be blasting through this, but yeah. This is one of the easier fuel pumps to open up. If you ever done the Yamahas, the YZs, they have the clips that you gotta have like freaking 4 flat heads or 3 flat heads, and one on each clip to get them apart. They're a pain in the butt. These cowies are pretty easy to disassemble and reassemble. Pull these over here. Dripping gas everywhere. Okay, let me set this aside just for a second. Now let's take a peek in this kit. Where does it open up? Here it is. For you guys that are wondering, that's the part number to the kit right here. Alright, here's the new motor. I'll go ahead and cut that out of the bag now. Get that out of the way. Alright, it's just a standard black motor. They didn't write anything on it. I know the Quantum, when you buy the Quantum kit, they'll actually say Quantum on it. And it comes, it's, you know, it's a universal kit, so it's going to come with parts for several different, I believe this is for the fuel pump for an LTR 450. It's like a housing that goes in. Set that aside. Yep, that's what that's for, because that's for that too. So this pump, I guarantee you, if you look on this, you're going to see somewhere on here, most likely LT. I don't see it, but I also don't see the KX250 here either. I'm just kind of pulling apart, setting aside the parts I know we're not going to need. Okay, this is a filter for this pump, so we're going to need that. So we won't need this filter. We won't need that one. There's an O-ring in there. Let me pop that out. I'll just leave it in. I'll just remember that we have an O-ring there if we need it. We got 2 O-rings here. We won't need. Yeah, that's the one we need. Okay. Let's see. You remember we were missing them little pieces, or the little right here. Stock, there's these little rubber pieces that go here. I was unable to find these. I was unable to find them even at the auto parts store. So I don't see that here in the kit. Twisty McSlide told me I can find them at the auto parts store. I did check and I didn't even have luck there. But I will admit I only went to AutoZone to look for it. But well, we'll see what we can put together. The owner did say he was okay with me pretty much rigging it up if I had to, kind of like what I did right here. He's okay with that. He just needs to get this bike up and running. So if that's what we have to do, that's what we'll do. I have this. I might be able to cut this and fit it in there. We'll see. Alright, let me set this aside. We have these O-rings here as well. Set it aside. That too, that's also for the LTR 450. Slide the old motor out. So this motor I just pulled out, this is a Quantum. Alright. And looks very similar to the All Balls one as far as they both have that black color. But the lids are a different color. Okay. Let me pull these little pieces out just in case I end up needing them. There we go. We have the new filter here. Just taking a peek at it. These can be hard to put on by hand, hard to press them on. I usually just take a small hammer. You want to hold it in your hand if you do this. Don't set it on the bench. You can mash that stuff in. Just hold it in your hand. Line it up. Tap them in place. There we go. Yeah, it's working pretty good. I'm just cutting this piece up and slipping it in there. Already did this side. Let me cut this one off over here and pop it in there. Now I will say, the O-rings that these kits often come with, Well, that one is the original one. They don't always fit the best, so sometimes you have to get creative and use your own O-rings. That one seems, yeah, okay. I'm just going to use the same one we had for this other pump here, the other motor. Alright, let me slide it in, give it a test fit. By the way, these motors do have a positive and a negative right there if you ever get confused. I'm just looking to make sure it has some friction. Let me know the O-ring is a tight fit. Yes, it does. Okay. And we have the O-ring there. I put them little rubber pieces in here. Let's see if that's going to cause a problem, or are we going to be able to bolt this thing down good. Looking good. All right. I'm going to use some blue stuck nuts thread locker. I'm about due to order some more of this stuff up. I'm kind of flying through it. It would actually be nice if they sold it in the big bottles for people that fly through it like me. But whatever the case, the price is right, so small bottles are okay, but I would like to have some big bottles. That way I can just buy one bottle and it sticks around forever. Alright. Put these wires in. Did they go like that? I don't think they did. I think they went like this. Yeah. Alright, the positive wire, well, I'll start with the back side here. Get the ground wire in. There we go. Get the positive in. Come on now. There we go. Let's bend these out of the way. We don't want them touching each other. Now, one thing that I like to do after I get a fuel pump together, it's dirty, but yeah. Try to blow in to the fuel pump outlet. Try to blow in it. If everything's sealed, including all the O-rings, the fuel pressure regulator, and also this one-way check valve that's built into the pump, if all that's good, you're not going to be able to blow anything into the pump. So I can't blow anything in it. It's good. Don't try sucking. You'll suck gas right in your mouth. It will allow flow to go out. So if you suck, it will suck in. But you shouldn't be able to blow into it, mainly because of that one-way check valve right there. I can tell you on this pump right here, I think that check valve was bad. One of the issues we were having with it, but that's okay. She's done with now. That's why if you notice in video 1, I said, well, the pump's not perfect. It's dripping out a little bit of gas out of here, but it's making pressure, so let's just keep moving forward with it for now. And I believe that's wise, because the check valve wasn't working properly. Alright, let me get some more stuck nuts here. Okay, I'm going to use this end pack. I got on the low setting. Normally, I would use that Black & Decker cordless drill I had, and I would set the drag and bottom these out with that, and then I would hand torque them tight by hand, but trying to get familiar with this thing. I got it on low setting. Okay, let me see how that felt. Yeah, not bad. I could have hit them a little bit longer and harder. Again, I'm just trying to get familiar with it, see what it does. Oh, and notice I'm holding the tank up right now. There is no dribblage from this pump. That's how a good pump should be. So if you pull your fuel line off and this thing just keeps dribbling, even if your bike runs okay, your fuel pump is compromised. Okay, let's test the pump out again. There's a red wire, so that's going to be positive. Just want to make sure everything came out good before I put it on the bike and start kicking my brains off. Now, like I mentioned in the first video, when you do this at home, make sure there's no gas outside the tank. Make sure the tank cap is on, sealed. There's no gas in your rags or anything like that, because when you make that first contact with this battery terminal, there was a spark. Okay, let's keep on gauge here. Looking good. She's kicking about 55, it says here, but this gauge is off by about 5 psi, so it's going to be about 50 psi, but it's looking good. Okay, the fuel pump's back on the bike. I'm going to turn this thing with this drill again, because I got these little freaking Airwalk shoes on. This thing's a bear to kick with these shoes on. So let's see. Started to start. Let's try again. It takes a little while when you first put the pump on. It's got a little pressure. Open the door up. So far, so good. Let me let her run for a little bit. Now let's see how she kickstarts. And I'm gonna let her run a little bit more. I really gotta test her out. Now before I start it back up, I want to mention, I'm noticing, I know you can't see it on camera here, I don't have any handlebars on, but it's taking about 4 kicks to start her up. The first 3 kicks I'm giving it no throttle. On the 4th kick I'm cracking the throttle, and then she barks off every time. It's happened every time so far. I honestly, the kickstart feels a little soft. I'm starting to really do think it's due for a top end. Compression's a little low. They'll do that when the compression starts getting a little bit low. You have to give them a little bit of throttle, give them more air in there so they have a little more to compress to combat the little bit that's leaking past the piston rings and stuff as you're kicking. Alright, let me try it again. This time I'm just going to crack the throttle right through the rib. every time, but man, you got to give her throttle for her to fire. She won't fire with no throttle. That's for sure. But she runs fine once she gets started. You know, I'm just thinking it's due for a top end, but I do think, as of right now, I think we have the fuel pump electrical issue straightened out. I'm gonna let it sit for a couple minutes and see if we can fire up again. I'll be right back. Okie dokie, she's been sitting for a little bit now. Let me see if I can start her up. Off camera, I brought the idle pretty low. She now does allow me to idle it pretty dang low. But alright, let's do it again. Okay, so far so good on that. Seems to be doing the trick. Okay, and one last time. Seems to be doing good. Let me go ahead and I think I'm gonna go ahead and remove the valve cover real quick. Check underneath it. I think he's going to have me do a top end on it. I'm almost certain on that. But let me pull the valve cover off. Sounds a little ticky up top, so let me just take a peek before I start ordering parts. Okay. Now I know you're supposed to check valves when they're when the motor is at room temperature, cold, but I'm not looking to check them adjust. I'm just looking to see what's going on. These look like they're stock cams. The timing chain feels good and snug, so that's good. This is a 10,000 feelers gauge, and I can slide this right underneath these intakes, no problem. If I remember correctly, this is supposed to be 4 to 6 thousandths on the intake. I'm able to get a 10 in there, no problem. It's pretty loosey-goosey, so it's going to need a valve adjustment at minimum. Let me check the exhaust. In a position where exhaust cams are faced upward, but not on the auto decompression. Okay, the exhaust is set tighter. I can't get that 10 underneath there, but I can on this one. So even the exhaust is too loose. The valves are just too loose, and that's what's making all that racket, I'm quite sure. So I'm going to put the valve cover back on, give her another test fire. You know, I just really want this fuel pump and this electrical system to prove itself. Then I'm going to call the owner and see where he wants to go with this. Okay, put it back together. Got it started up again. I did that off camera. Took a lot of kicks to get it started this time, but I did get it started. Once I got it started, it ran fine. Shut it down, and it started up the first kick that time. Shut it down, started up. Took about 3 or 4 kicks, but it fired up. As right now, I'm going to suggest on this bike at least the top end and a valve adjustment, but I'm also going to suggest we replace this little condenser right here. All this is a little capacitor, right? These bikes do not have a battery on them like your electric start bikes. And so when you first give this bike the first kick, there's no electricity in the system until this generator stator right here starts making some electricity. It stores the electricity in this. It's just a capacitor, condenser, whatever you want to call it. It's like a battery, and it stores power. So your first kick or two, you're actually charging that up. That's why all these fuel injection bikes that are not electric start, the kickstart fuel injection bikes, when they're cold and they've been sitting for a few days or whatever, you'll notice they always take a few kicks before they start. I remember I used to own a 2009 CRF 450, and in the manual it said to give it 2 or 3 light kicks first before you start really kicking it. And what they're really looking to do is just charge up this capacitor right here. I call it a capacitor. I believe it's called a condenser though. But so I'm going to suggest replacing that too, because it'll store power better, longer, and make it a little easier for it to start. I did find it was weird that after I checked the valves and did all that, I had to kick it a lot before it started, and then it fired right up, and then it fired right up easily. And it's an older bike, these aren't really that expensive, so yeah, keep that in mind. If your bike is a pain in the butt, you got to kick it like real fast over and over again or something. I mean, it could be the fuel pump, but these things don't last forever, and all it is a little rechargeable battery. But I know it's redundant. I'm gonna start it up again. It's now been sitting for about 5 minutes, a good 5 minutes, maybe 6. It just died there. What's going on? Let's see. It's like the fuel pump is not working again. I know that sound. That's the sound of the fuel pump that's not it's not working. So I'm not going to hook a whole voltmeter up to it now. I generally know. I'm going to give it some more kicks, and if it doesn't fire, yes, it fired up right there for a split second and just blew it up. And that's just, there's fuel pressure built up in the fuel line, and then once it uses up all that fuel pressure in the fuel line, it just dies. Let's see. Basically, I think it's rejecting the fuel pump again. There it goes again. Okay, so we got an all balls fuel pump. We have all that. Brand new CDI. I'm gonna pop the new CDI in it. He has the old one in it right now, so let me pop the new CDI in it. Let's see what that does. Okay, I got the original CDI just resting there, plugged in the new CDI, so let's give her some kicks. This is getting tricky. Holy cow, I'm tired of kicking this thing. Let's see here. Let's do what we always do. That is weird. It's back to not running again. Let me connect the original CDI up and try this again. Original CDI, here we go. Nothing. Looks like we are back to the drawing board. Shoot! Well, first let me make sure we're just dealing with the fuel issue again. I have the fuel pump wire right there, some electrical wires. I'm going to connect it to that battery, wired up auxiliary on an auxiliary battery, and then and see if we can fire her up. And let's just make sure that like the motor's still good and stuff, you know, make sure it didn't just blow up on us or something weird or crazy. Alright, pump is on. Started the fire. Okay, runs like that. Started up a little bit flooded, it sounded like. Let's connect it back up to the original. I connected it back up to the harness there. Now let's see if it fires up. Just trying to get a feel for what's going on here. See, now it runs again. This is strange. Now it seems to be firing up just fine. Try it again. There you go, first kick. Okay. I got an idea. Okay, quick observation. Whenever it gets to the point that it rejects the fuel pump, I can spin it with the drill right here, the motor, forever, and it won't turn the fuel pump back on and fire up. But if I disconnect the fuel pump from here, connect the auxiliary battery to it, and give it its own power source, the fuel pump, then I can spin it right there, get it to fire up, the bike will run. I can shut the bike off, disconnect the fuel pump from that battery, reconnect it back to the bike's wire harness, and the bike will start up every time again. Until while the bike's off, all I gotta do is unplug the fuel pump one time and plug it back in one time. I've done this several times, and it will reject it again, and it will not start and run until I disconnect it again, connect it to the battery, start it up with the drill, get it running, shut it down, disconnect it from the battery, and connect it to the harness, and then it accepts it again. What's going on here? I don't know. I have no clue. But you know, that's why I'm making this video, just taking you along with me on some of the tougher jobs. So you know, I have to start with some questionable stuff here, because now we're just kind of like, you know, it's just questionable. This stator that he put in is not aftermarket. Not saying that could affect it, but we're just trying to roll things out here. I've already tried the different CDI, same result. Doesn't matter which CDI is running the bike, it's still going to do the same thing. So I'm still suspicious of this, but you know, before we go through anything, let me go ahead and put the OEM CDI, the OEM stator in it, and let's see what that does. I'll be right back. It's surely aftermarket stator. Let me show you the difference with the OEM one. This is the OEM one, or at least this is the one that was originally on the bike. It appears to be the OEM one. I'm pretty familiar with how the wires look on them and stuff, and this one is definitely aftermarket. Not saying this is gonna fix it, but I'm trying to rule this out, you know. At this point, you know, yeah, it's any man's guess. I'm just trying to use some, I'm not even gonna call them educated guesses. I'm just gonna call them guesses. But yeah, if it was my bike, this is what I would be doing, putting the OEM stator back then. If it was good, why swap it out anyway with these aftermarket ones? I'm just wondering if maybe, you know, it's maybe sending noise into the electrical system or something that's tripping out the CDI and making the CDI think there's something wrong with the fuel pump, and then rejecting the fuel pump. These are just guesses. I don't know, but we're gonna find out. Someone's got to trot down this road, right? I guess it's me. Okay, I put some red thread locker in all these. Let's pop these suckers in. Again, I'm still a little suspicious with that condenser, but there's a way to test that before we buy a new one, or to see if that's the case, and we'll get to that if we have to. Alright, let's see how this new impact does. Still working on getting familiar with it. My brother claims it won't strip stuff out on the low setting, so that's what I'm testing out. I'm not bottoming them out too hard, just getting a feel for how hard it took it. Yeah, could have gave it a little bit more, but I don't want to strip it out. I'm just trying to get familiar with it. This is what, you know, when you hear me say in my videos to be familiar with your impact, this is what it takes sometimes, or pretty much every time when you get a new impact, to become familiar with it. And after I get real familiar with it with setting number 1, you know, it has 3 power settings here, I'll start checking out setting number 2 and setting number 3 and just see what it does. Alright, let me put this back on the bike and see what we got. Okay, the original stator is in. Okay, the wire harness, so I have it connected like this where I can hook the voltmeter up to it, but at the same time still run power to the fuel pump, and I'm doing that so I can keep track of the voltage down here in the voltmeter. I'll let you know what I see, and let's try it. send the voltage to it so it wants to run. Let me try turning the choke on. Okay, that's a good sign. Let's try it again. I'll show. This time I'll put it down here in the voltmeter so you can see what's going on. Can you see it there? Yes, you can. All right. Okay. Now we're back to this part right here. What was happening earlier was I'd get it running, everything's fine, but when I disconnect the fuel pump and reconnect it, then it would start acting like a fool. So let's try disconnecting the fuel pump. I'm just going to disconnect it right here with these. Okay, it's disconnected. I'm going to reconnect it. Alrighty. Now let me put it back down here in the voltmeter. Let's see if it fixed our issue. Let's see. Huh. Okay. It might have fixed our issue. The real test is, let me oh boy, I hope we're not like a dog chasing our tail here. Let me disconnect this whole mess and just connect it directly to the wire harness and see what we have. Okay, let's give it another shot. Nope. Alright, what's going on here? Let me reconnect my whole junction here. Okay, got it reconnected the way I had it before with the voltmeter tapped in so we can see what's going on. See if it reads some voltage while we try cranking it. Let's see if it starts up. Started for a second and died. Alright. Okay, she runs again. Now I'm just starting to question, do we have a bad connection between here and there? Remember I found dielectric grease on it. It's been plugged in and out a million times. Let's just see if we have a bad connection. I mean, dielectric grease has its place, but man, I find it causes more harm than good sometimes. And I'm not saying that's what's causing it. Could just be a weak pinch point, and who knows, this might not even be the issue. But if I jump it the way I've been doing, bike starts up and runs, and when I don't, then when I just plug it in directly, then it doesn't run. Let me see how this one feels sliding up onto the one internal. Let me just make sure there's some friction to it. It's pretty loose as a goose. Yeah, there's no friction at all. That's a little concerning. Man, oh man. Alright. I wonder if I can repair this, or if I'm just gonna have to put a different connection on it. Before I pull both of these out, I want to mark which side was the positive. So I'm gonna plug it in. I see the red wires right there. I'm just gonna put an R on this side right here, so I know that that is the side the red wire goes on, because I'm about to yank this thing completely apart. Gremlins, they're fun. Alright, if you don't know what I'm doing here, there's a little plastic tab. If you lift that up with something skinny like this, then you can slide this sucker right on out of there. Okay, let me see how the red one fits in here. Let's slide it right over. Loose as a goose. Loose as a goose. And when you add dielectric grease to it, dielectric, however you want to pronounce it, I know I pronounce everything wrong. When you add that to the mix, which is a insulator, well, then you can get a poor connection pretty easily. So let's see if there's something I can do to fix this. Well, I tried putting something underneath the little tab in there and lifting it up, but it's pretty limp. Let me try pinching it down a little bit right here and see if we can get a tighter grab. I don't want to deform it, but I want to just see. It's too tight. Ah, shoot. Try something else. Okay, I actually think I got it. I opened them back up and I pinched them back down, and let me double check one more time. Tight fit, good. Let me try this one. Oop. Seems to be tight. Okay, actually a little bit tighter than the other one, but that's okay. All right, the red, it goes in this way, and the red was on that side, so let's pop it in place here. Okay, I just slid these in here for a test fire, just see if we have a good connection. I had to get rid of the male part of it for the time being, but we have a bigger issue too. Remember on the first video I pointed out that these Kawasaki pumps, where the wire connects to the pump, I'll show you in a minute, they like to, if they get yanked a little bit too hard or too much, they lose a connection there, they break. Well, that happened to this one. It got to the point that even if I connected it to the battery, it wouldn't turn on, and I chased it down to that. If you remember in the first video, I pointed out that it already looked pretty rough, and I kind of thought that would have been what was wrong with it in the first part, right off the rip when I first started looking at it, but that ended up not being the case. It was hanging in there. Well, it gave up finally. So what I've done for the time being is I've kind of soldered the wires to the nubs that were left in there. I'll show you that in a minute. But we have it connected up. Before I go any further, I just want to test things. So I'm going to fire it up. Okay, now here's how I can test if it's going to bitch and complain. Earlier, I fired up when I would disconnect the fuel pump and reconnect it. Then it would reject the fuel pump. So let's try disconnecting it. Okay, it's disconnected. Now let's reconnect it. Now let's see if it starts up. Okay, I'm gonna say I got that fixed. I got that squared away. Holy cow. I don't know exactly what caused it. All I can say is I'm gonna guess something with the stator, but after that, then we ran into a bad connection here, as you saw, and after that, I didn't show you, but I ran into a bad connection down in there on the fuel pump. I'm gonna show you that in a minute, and I did that off video, and now it seems to be doing good. I'm gonna try a couple more times though. You know, we've been fooled already, right? We've been fooled. I don't want to be fooled again. So let me try. Okay, see, it runs. Let's try disconnecting the fuel pump again. Again, that's when it would always complain and bitch, is when I would disconnect and reconnect. And then I would have to connect it to the battery, if you don't remember, get it started up, shut it down, then reconnect it, and then it would be fine again. It would start back up and run until I disconnected and reconnected it one more time. Okay, just did it. Let's see. Fingers crossed. If it fires up, I'm gonna say I'm leaning towards it being fixed so far as that's concerned. Yes. All right. So let me show you. Here's where the connection broke right here. Like I pointed out, they get weak. And when it breaks, it only leaves you the smallest nub to solder on. I really don't suggest riding around the track like that unless you can get a good repair on it. I'm going to try to strip it down a little bit and see if I can get a good repair on it for the time being. And even then, I'm going to permanently, and I think they should have did this from the factory, strap this wire to one of these bolts or something so it doesn't wiggle right here every time the bike vibrates. You pull the pump on, off, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to see what I can do. Okay, I got them soldered onto the nubs here. I know it doesn't look pretty, but If I get the camera in here closer for you. No, it doesn't look pretty, but it's actually I got a solid solder on them, and then I put this little thing right there which allowed me to zip tie this wire so I don't have to worry about that happening again. And then I put a new terminal in, on the end here, all new, well, used, but it fits nice and tight. So now I'm not going to say this is like a permanent fix. I'm not too thrilled with having wires soldered on here like that, but it will work. And actually it'll probably work for pretty much ever, because you can yank on this thing as much as you want. It's not going to send anything down the line, but it's going to be good for us to square this thing away, figure it all out, because as you see, we have gremlins and they just keep popping. Every time we think we have it, something pops up. Once we get it all squared away, it's proven, everything like that, then I would suggest either getting a honestly, I would suggest going on eBay, getting a used pump that's maybe bad, get as cheap as you can, as long as these wires are good going into this thing, and taking that all balls kit that we put in here and put it in that pump assembly. But for now, until we can get all these gremlins squared away, this is what we're doing. Let's go ahead and put it back on the bike and fire her up. Okie dokie, let's fire her up. Okay, let's try disconnecting the pump and reconnecting it. Remember, that would cause the computer to reject it every time. Let's see. Oh, pull that off there. Well, I think we have it all figured out. I'm going to get her fully warm a little bit, shut her down, start her up, do all that. I'm going to do it off camera to save you time. I'll be right back, let you know if it hangs in there. Let's see. Okay, I have started her up, shut her down, started her up, shut her down, let her run, let her get hot, everything, quite a while. So now I just let her sit for about 5 minutes, let it cool down just a hair. Let's start her up again. I'm going to try disconnecting the fuel pumps again. Let's disconnect it for a second. Run it back in. Let's see if it starts to run. Well, shoot, I think it's running. Holy freaking cow. Personally, if I owned one of these Kawasaki's or Zukis, they do the same thing. They have this little white block that the wires come directly out of. I would put yourself a little something there to zip tie or strap the wires down somehow, some way, so that when it wiggles, it doesn't put stress in here, because I can't tell you how many of them I've seen break right there throughout the years. A ton. People will put a new fuel pump motor and it still won't work, and they chase it down to no power getting to the fuel pump because the insulation will look okay, but the wiring on the inside just frays and breaks from just moving, vibrating, you name it. So if you own one of these Cowies, just take a few minutes and lift it up and figure out how to strap this in so the wire can move and you can yank on it without putting stress in this right here, so you don't run into this issue on your own bike. Okay, I let her sit for like 30 minutes and she fired up, and about 3 kicks, maybe 4, as it's been doing. But yeah, so I called the owner and well, explained to them everything that happened, everything that went on. It's strange that it kept rejecting the fuel pump when I would disconnect this and reconnect this at the harness until I put the OEM stator back in. And then it wouldn't reject the fuel pump anymore. Now, I don't know if the aftermarket stator was sending noise to the system and just making the PCM, ECM, CDI, whatever you want to call it, reject the fuel pump and act glitchy. I do know that aftermarket stators can sometimes be wonky and cause all kinds of little issues. When it comes to stators, it's best just to get the OEM one if they still make it and still available for your bike. But whatever the case is, that seemed to fix that. And then we started running into issues with the bad connection between the harness and the fuel pump, and then a bad connection where the wires for the fuel pump go into the fuel pump, and that's just from messing with it too much. This bike's been messed with so much trying to figure out these glitchy issues that, you know, things just kind of get tired, and wires get worn out and tired. And terminals, if you keep plugging them, unplugging them, stuff just gets tired after a while. And I'm tired too, so I'm having me a Red Bull. So for the time being, and I agree with this, I suggested it to some degree, we're going to save the top end for a little bit later, though it does feel like it's a little bit shy on compression. We need to get this bike out there at least for one day, let it prove itself. But we do need to get them valves adjusted. They are just way too loose. And I did suggest getting a new condenser. I'll explain to you these condensers, how you can kind of tell when they're getting older. When a condenser is brand new, it will hold power for quite a while. And as they get older, I gotta put this shifter back on. I pulled that off to get that cover off here for the stator. But as they get older, they don't hold power as long, to the point that they don't even hold power anymore if they get really old. But what happens is, okay, when your bike's cold in the morning, hasn't ran that day, it's been sitting overnight, whatever, and you go to kick it, no matter what, these fuel injection kickstart bikes will take 2, 3, 4, usually 3 or 4 kicks. If you get it started on 2 kicks when it's cold, well, hey, you got lucky with that one. But they usually take about 3 to 4 kicks, and it's normal because your first couple kicks, it takes a lot of electricity to run all that, you know, to run the fuel pump and the fuel injector and the electronics, the computer system and everything like that. All that stuff needs power. It needs to get the system needs to light up. So on your first 2 and 3 kicks, really what you're doing is you're charging that up so that it has enough power in between kicks for the computer to be on and the fuel pump to be able to spin up and run and open the ejector and all that. Again, in 2009, I remember when I owned the 2009 Honda, the manual said to give it 2 or 3 soft kicks first before giving it a strong firm kick to get it started up when the bike was cold. And that was just to charge up the condenser before you give it that nice firm hard kick. So when a bike always takes 3 or 4 kicks, even when it's warm, you just shut it off, you let it sit for 10 minutes, and now it takes 3 or 4 kicks to start back up again. It could be a lot of things, right? I mean, you know, it could be a poorly running motor, low in compression, you know, a crappy fuel injection. It could be a lot of things, but it can be this, and this is a 2016. So I suggested to him, let's get a new one of them just to cross that out of the equation, and let's go ahead and adjust the valves. That needs to be done. And let's get it out there and see how she does, and go from there. And then we'll do a top end. If everything else turns out good, we'll do a top end, and we'll also worry about that little solder connection I did up there for the fuel pump. That should hang in there for now. It should be okay. So I think that's a wrap for this one. I will be adjusting the valves for it. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a valve adjustment video or not on this one. I might. Let me know down in the comments if you guys think that's something I should do. I know I've done a lot of valve adjustments here on the bench on motors that I'm rebuilding. I don't think I ever have done one on camera for you guys while the motor is still on the bike, so maybe I should go ahead and knock that out. But before I end this video, let me try starting it again. Well, heck, that time she started first kick, so maybe she doesn't need a new condenser. I'll figure it out, and I guess I'll let you know. I'll fill you in during the valve adjustment video coming up if we get a new condenser for now. I'm going to play with her a little bit more, let her get cold, start her up, all that kind of stuff. But so far, so good. So far, she's doing good. I'm not going to put the shrouds on her yet because I still have to take the seat and the tank off to adjust the valves. But, well, there you go. You got to watch me fumble through this whole job, and whew, this was a tough one, and I felt like an idiot a lot of times. And, you know, just sometimes they can beat you, but I was kind of determined not to let this one beat me, and I think we have it figured out. So this weekend, I'm not sure what bike I'm going to ride yet. I'm kind of thinking on taking the YZ250 two-stroke out again one more weekend, but I might take my 125 out this weekend. Not sure, but I do know where I'm riding. I'm riding at MX74, 74 MX, whatever. I always get them mixed up which way it is. But love that track, great track. I'm going to be out there on Saturday. It's girls ride free, so my wife is going to get the ride free. There's going to be a lot of other females there riding, and of course I'll be out there riding with my friends, having a good time. I hope all you guys get a good weekend of riding in. If you sat through this whole video and watched me fumble through this whole job, I just want to say sincerely thank you, and hope it was entertaining. Hope you learned something. Catch you in the next video.